Good morning. So, continuing my last session, that is parts of plant, we have discussed about root system, shoot system and also leaves. Today I will discuss about the main reproductive part of plant, that is flower, and the parts of flower and the pollination also. So let's move on to the points about flowers. Flower has green sepals, colored petals, central stamen and pistil. This is the diagram of flower. You can see these are green sepals, this portion, okay, and these are petals which are generally colorful, okay. Now flowers are having centrally located pistil. This is pistil, this whole portion is pistil, and these two are stamen. These two are stamen. So these are the four main parts of flower. What are they? Green sepals, colored petals, centrally located pistil and stamen. Okay, so sepals. First let's discuss about sepals. So these are the four roles of flower. We generally, the term role is used in science. These are the four roles. This is the first role, that is sepal. This is second role, that is petal. This is third row, that is the pistil, and the fourth row, that is stamen. Okay, so first row is sepal or calyx, outer part of flower that encloses developing bud. You often notice the bud which is enclosed by green color outgrowth, that is known as sepal. So sepals are outer part of the flower that encloses the developing bud. Second point is, when the flower is bud, the sepals enclose and protect the more delicate floral parts. When the flower is actually in bud condition, the sepals are protecting that bud. That means it is protecting the innermost part of the flower, all the parts of the flower. So sepals are actually protecting more delicate floral parts. Next role is petals. These colored parts, these are petals. Modified leaves that surrounded the reproductive parts of the flower is known as petals. These are actually modified leaves. It encloses the reproductive part, the pistil and the stamen. These are two reproductive parts, and the petals are those parts which are protecting these two reproductive parts of flower. So they are colored or shaped unusually to attract pollination. They are colored. These petals are generally colored and unusually designed so that it can attract the insect for pollination. Okay. So petals are those part which is protecting the reproductive part of flowers, and it actually designed, colored and unusually shaped so that it can attract the insect for pollination. Next part is androecium, or that means stamen, anther and filament. So androecium consists of stamen, as I have shown here. This is stamen, which consists of anther and filament. Each stamen has a stalk called filament. You can see that this is the stalk. So this is called filament, and the two-lobed structure at the tip of the filament called anthers. The two-lobed structure at the tip of the filament is called anther, Actually, anther is containing the pollen grains, the male parts of the plant. It is containing the pollen grains, the main part of the male part of the plant. Next part is gynoecium. This is androecium, the male part. What I have told that it consists of stamen. Each stamen has a stalk called filament, and at the tip there is a two-lobed structure, that is anther. Anthers actually contain pollen grains. Pollen grains means the male reproductive gamete of plant. Next is gynoecium. Gynoecium, as I told that this is the male part. So gynoecium must be the female part. Gynoecium consists stigma, style and ovary. You can see this is stigma, this is style and this is ovary. Consist of ovary at the base. The ovary is at the base and contains ovules or eggs. These black portions are eggs. So this is ovary and it contains ovules or eggs, the female gametes. Ovary extends to long filament called style. This is the long filament which is called style, and which flattens at the tip to form stigma. The flattened portion at the tip is called stigma. So gynoecium is having three parts: stigma, style, ovary. At the base it is ovary, and ovary is containing eggs or ovules, that is main female reproductive gamete, and then the filament type stalk, that is called style, and at the base of the style it is a flattened portion, that is called stigma. So this is the female reproductive part of flower, and we have discussed about androecium, that is male reproductive part of flower. Okay, now let's move on to pollination. These are the main parts of flower, that is sepals, petals, androecium and gynoecium. Okay, now let's move on to next portion, next topic, that is pollination. Okay, so what is pollination? Pollen grains, as I have discussed, that anther contains pollen grains. That pollen grain should be shifted to the female part, otherwise how male gamete and female gamete will fuse to form zygote. So for this fusion there is a procedure that is called pollination. In that procedure, transfer of pollen from anther, that is male part, to the stigma, that is female part of flower which contains egg. So transfer of pollen grains from the male part to female part of flower is called pollination. So pollination is mainly the transfer of pollen grains so that the reproduction can be happened. The male gamete can fuse to the female gamete and can produce zygote. Male gamete means pollen grains, female gamete means eggs or ovule, that is in ovary. So this is in plant. Pollen grain is the male gamete in plant and eggs or ovules are the female gamete in plant. So that those two reproductive parts should be fused. So that is why pollination has happened. Pollination is nothing but the transfer of pollen grains from male flower to female flower or male part to female part. Okay. Now pollinations are of two types: self-pollination and cross-pollination. Self means which is done in self condition, that means in the flower itself, in that flower itself. Cross means maybe it is occurred in both flowers. So let's find out. So first, self-pollination. Pollen is transferred to the stigma of same flower or flower borne to the same plant. Here you can see in one flower only you can have both part, male part and female part. So when the pollen is transferred from this part to this part of same flower, from the male part to the female part of the same flower, that is called self-pollination. And also, if the pollen is transferred to the other flower of the same plant, that is also self-pollination. Other flower of same plant or to the same plant, both are known as self-pollination. But cross is something different. Cross-pollination means pollen is transferred to the flowers of other plant of same species. Here pollen is transferred to the flowers of other plant. In self-pollination, the pollen is transferred to the same flower or to the other flower of same plant. But in cross-pollination, it will be transferred to the flowers of other plants. Then it is called cross-pollination. So today we have discussed about the main reproductive part of plant, that is flower. We have done the 4 roles of flower, that is parts of flower. First role is sepals, the green part. Second role, the colored portion, that is petals. And third part is androecium, that is the male part, which is having stamen, anther and filament. And the last but not the least portion is the gynoecium, that is female part, which is having ovary style stigma. And ovary is having eggs or ovules, and anther is having pollen grains. Next we have learned about pollination, self and cross-pollination as well. What is self-pollination, what is cross-pollination, because pollination is very important in reproduction. If pollination has not been happened over there, so there won't be a zygote formation. In that case, reproduction will be disturbed. So pollination is very important part of flower. So pollination is having 2 parts, that is 2 types, that is self-pollination and cross-pollination. So we have learned, we have finished about flower, parts of flower, pollination and types of flowers. In my next class we will continue with another part of plant, which is also very important. So till then, thank you, goodbye.